I'm in the infrared sauna, as you can see, and it's 113 degrees. And I guess I'll sit in here for 48 minutes. It seems I'm starting to do healthy things again, or gravitating towards that. Today I remembered to have turmeric powder in coconut milk, and I'm going to take the probiotic and I'm going to get better at that, especially because I started listening to the audiobook Brain Maker. The Kindle book was like $18 or something, so I signed up for a free trial of Amazon's Audible, and it's not unlimited. I do get one book, so I chose this Brain Maker book. And it doesn't talk about bipolar specifically, but it talks about mood disorders in general, like anxiety and depression, and I think it'll touch on schizophrenia at some point. But it's talking about how important it is to have a healthy gut, and I already know that, but that's one thing that I've been neglecting. And I don't want to think of this in terms of it's going to prevent something or fix something. Likely the struggles will happen again. Maybe they won't be as bad. That would be nice, because I've been not doing well since October 1st, and it's now mid-January. That's a long time. And I'm sure I've had struggles like that before, when I've had, quote, relapses in the past. I do remember prolonged depression for several months, at least on 2 occasions, but I think it was easier because I had my own space to be semi-healthy, wallow, do the basics like grocery shopping and laundry, and not have to put on a happy face for others around me. Not that I was completely miserable, but there was no one around to project stuff onto, which made it easier. I was dealing with my own internal stuff, and it didn't get projected onto others around because there weren't others around. And that makes it more confusing, and it makes it harder because then in my not so good state, I have to attempt to fix if I don't respond perfectly to somebody, which if no one was around, I wouldn't have to do that. I wouldn't even have to try to think that and adjust myself. So today I feel better, like I can be around people, so there's not that feeling of, oh, I have to try to put on a happy face. It's just, that's fine that people are around. And usually that's how I am, but during those hard periods of time, it's really, 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 really challenging. And I really think that prolonged it even more. So, yeah. And yesterday I took my first baby aspirin, or I got a low dose aspirin, no name brand type thing, because it was cheaper, 81 milligrams. So I'll try that for a month at least. And it's hard to say whether I'm coming out of this naturally or I'm coming out of this more so because I've been on these extra supplements, and a lot of them, for the last month. But usually this only lasts 4 months max anyway. So it's really hard to say whether all this extra stuff is necessary or not. Though I think getting some healthy habits is good for long-term health, especially because I do seemingly have to take some kind of pharmaceutical. So being healthy is never a bad thing, especially because I've been watching that show Embarrassing Bodies, and there's a lot of people walking around with skin conditions and pain, and a lot of it I feel is a culmination of not taking care of oneself. It's easy to slap some steroid cream on some skin condition and watch it go away, but what is that saying about the overall health of the body in general? It's not good. And I don't have any problems with my skin or pain, so I'm lucky that way. And I look relatively young. I haven't really had as many comments lately, but in the previous few years, people think I'm like 25, and I'm 35, so that's good. And yeah, so Brainmaker book, I've wanted to read that for a while, so I'm listening to it, and it's good to learn more about this gut stuff and get it under control, because the gut-brain connection is a no-brainer. A no first brainer or second brainer, or saying that the gut is the first brain now, or what have you. And I need to figure out the diet thing. So maybe thinking about it in terms of mitigating the long-term effects of taking meds, and also maybe making the dips less. And something interesting on the Brainmaker book, he was talking about something called LPS, which is lipoprotein, I don't know, something like fat combined with protein and sugar. No, lipopolysaccharide, that's what it is. So fat and a sugar, I think. Might not be saying this right. And it's not good in the body, and the more there is, and it's attached to a bacteria or something, and then there's leaky gut, it can go into the brain. So the blood-brain barrier isn't as sturdy and fixed as they previously thought. It can get leaky too. So when that LPS gets into the brain, it causes inflammation big time. And so, without going into that too much, because I don't know it anyway, I looked up LPS and bipolar, and I came across a study. In the little Google headline, it talked about it a bit, and it wasn't really a paper about that, but it was talking about microglia in the brain, and how the microglia in the brain, when they get activated in a certain way with the inflammatory cytokines that can leak through the blood-brain barrier and activate the microglia become autophages, which means they eat or kill or induce apoptosis in brain cells. So this is interesting because I've talked a lot about brain cell death and neuroplasticity, and this paper links the neuroplasticity, the brain cell death due to autophagy, as well as serotonin and tryptophan. It was talking about how when the inflammation gets to that high enough point and the microglia get activated, tryptophan is no longer used to build serotonin. It goes into some other pathway. It was a IPO pathway or something, which it didn't really explain. But the IPO pathway, and it might be I something else. It's starting to get sweaty in here. It decreases BDNF. And what was the other thing that was in there that was really interesting? Oh yeah. It decreases something called GSK beta, I think it was. And these letters could be slightly off. And then I looked up, well, what does GSK beta mean? Or what does it stand for? And it's glycogen synthase kinase. And this is in the brain, but I found it a little fascinating, and I don't have enough knowledge and information to know for sure. Like, I don't speak that language of microbiology and not microbiology, neurochemistry and biochemistry fluently, but yesterday in my video I was talking about how it seems like there's something about how the glycogen gets dumped all at once or something, and that's something in the liver. It's not to do with the brain, but what I was thinking when I read that was if glycogen synthase kinase activity gets decreased in general in the body, synthase is synthesis, so glycogen synthesis, which is storing sugar. Maybe sugar stops getting stored. Maybe when there's inflammation, it's partly the biochemical level equivalent of fight or flight. There's like a war going on in our body at the cellular and biochemical level. So we're not going to be storing sugar for use tomorrow or the next day. We're going to be using it now to run or to fight. So I thought that was interesting because of how I felt that effect of having so much sugar in my system from eating all those dates, which is like having a big shot of sugar, which would be similar to if all of a sudden all of the glycogen got broken down into sugar and dumped into the blood, which when we exercise, we burn that off. So I'm wondering if in so-called psychosis or mania, we stop storing so much glycogen, or it's sort of dumped into the blood so we have access to that energy, but maybe at some point it runs out and we don't have access to enough energy. That's not the only thing, but it sort of relates in a way. So I was thinking, I wonder if, say, in psychosis, when I get switched into psychosis and I'm feeling that body pain, maybe it partly is like too much sugar. I wonder if I did high intensity exercise, if it would burn off that excess, sort of like when I ate all those dates. If I was to run a mile or something or sprint for as long as I could, maybe that would burn it off faster and it wouldn't cause effects of having really high sugar, which is part of what is talked about in the Brainmaker book, talking about how blood sugar regulation problems cause brain problems. Like they're saying Alzheimer's is being called type 3 diabetes because of the blood sugar problems causing these problems in the brain, and I don't have enough knowledge or time to go into that. So on a small scale, small timeline level, there could be something going on with blood sugar during psychosis, and not in terms of, oh, I'm eating a bad diet all the time so it leads to psychosis, but I've talked about before how it's kind of like fight, flight, freeze, or free. And free is trying to free oneself of psychosis, which is partly the past, personal past, collective human past, and experiencing those things and feeling the terror and fear and hatred and everything around that, sort of the lower emotions coming in and having to deal with those and trying to get free. So mania is feeling free of it, and then that process eventually runs out of energy and there's a metabolic switch, and then we're returning to old physiology and brain cells are dying and there's inflammation and la-da-da. So I can see how a lot of it possibly ties together, and see if I can think of a way to put it all together and it seems like I'm still going with this. And I made a time to see a friend for dinner and a time on Wednesday to meet a friend for coffee, so I think my brain's on the mend. Took a really, really long time this time, but that's the thing with it. It's not the same. I just did 2 laps of the park, and a friend texted me and said that Dolores O'Riordan died. And that's sad. Cranberries were definitely one of my favorite bands in my teenage years. One of my favorite songs of theirs is Ode to My Family. She had such a beautiful voice. And it's sad considering just a couple days ago I watched about 4 different things on YouTube about 4 different celebrities that passed away tragically and sort of mysteriously in some cases. And understand the things I say, don't turn away from me, 'cause I spent half my life out there. You wouldn't disagree. Just see me, just see, do you like me? Do you like me standing there? Do you notice? Do you know? Do you see me? Do you see me? Does anyone care? On happiness, where's when I was young? Okay, I stopped there. And after my infrared sauna, I had a little cocktail of 4 different probiotics that I have on hand. One is the one I got because of Peter Smith of Balancing Brain Chemistry, and I had one from Lou Corona of Pyridime. Another one, I don't know what it was, and then another one which was these ancient strains. I don't remember how I came across that. And then I had a shower, and about an hour later from taking the probiotics, I was sitting there emailing my brain twin, and I noticed a little bit of an anxious feeling in my guts. And it was something to make note of, because that's partly how this all started this time around, of this relapse or crisis, was this subtle anxiety in different parts of my body. So I need to be cautious that it's not starting again from that. But it definitely correlates with certain things like eating a bunch of dates. So things that I'm doing, eating too many dates, and then introducing this cocktail of probiotics. Since I'm listening to this Brainmaker book, and something entered my mind earlier today about causation and correlation and association, and thinking about, and I've talked about this with myself before, how it's not that a certain molecule causes something. I feel it's the microscopic correlate in a way. So feeling, say, anxiety on this macroscopic human emotion level, you can trickle all the way down to the probiotic level of microorganisms in the gut, and something's going on there in their interaction. Or something like thinking that, say, DMT, dimethyltryptamine, causes mystical experiences, or it is the tiny version tapered all the way up. So things started with, in evolution, started with I can't think right now very well, but like elements, the periodic table, and then went to compounds, and then molecules, and then biomolecules, and then biochemistry, and then cells, and blah blah blah, all the way up. So this physical manifestation that we experience as humans is mirrored, and the same kind of drama is playing out on the chemical level, the biochemical level, the microscopic level of the probiotics and things. So it's more like in studies, one study will say, oh, this fish oil makes this better, and this is associated with this, and this causes this, and this causes that. It's more like a state. So having certain chemical elements present and all of it together trickles up to produce this effect at the human level that we experience. So in that way, by adding some of these little tiny things, we're increasing the likelihood of a combination that will lead to a trickle up effect in the manifest level that is quote unquote good or desirable. This book is talking a lot about the different probiotics and the combinations of them, and obesity, and the combinations leading to brain disease and things like that. So it makes sense. As humans, we can alter our experience by altering what we imbibe or consume. A deer isn't going to think, I'm going to take some marijuana to change my mental state, but we as humans can volitionally choose to do that. So we have that, and that's, I wouldn't say it's entirely uniquely human. I think there's evidence out there of animals doing different substances and eating certain plants to get a certain effect. Even dogs eating grass in order to throw up because of whatever. I don't know much about dogs. Is like the same as us taking in something to create a certain effect. So in that way, why wouldn't we try to volitionally figure out what works well? And then another thing I thought of related to this whole introducing all those probiotics at once and the little anxious feeling was that it's sort of like on the microbiome level, or the level of the probiotics and microorganisms in the gut. It's like having a house party and then all of a sudden 1,000 different strangers show up. Those original people there would feel somewhat anxious and socially scared, or wondering what's going to happen, or what does this mean, where did all these people come from, why are they here? So if you think of this trickle up and trickle down mirroring, or I guess it's a holarchy or a hierarchy, a holarchy in a way, things that are happening at the level of the gut are also happening at the level of our human experience. So I'm wondering if introducing all those probiotics gave my gut's current microbiota a little bit of anxiety and nervousness. And then I ate an apple and took my daily aspirin, which is something that I've introduced. This Brain Maker book talks a lot about inflammation, and aspirin is an anti-inflammatory, not one that I'd want to take long term per se, but I'll take it for now and see if it helps. And maybe it does. I've been taking it for 2 days, and the last 2 days I've had better days, and I've been taking the probiotic. So I don't know if it's causing that, or if I'm introducing those elements, which changes the overall everything. I'm changing the microbiome, I'm changing the chemistry of my guts and the whole body, and then my human experience changes. I'm also wondering if it has something to do with the whole bipolar psychosis mania thing, like a certain combination of the microbiomes going on, that there's not too much inflammation, so then there's a lot of BDNF, which is brain-derived neurotrophic factor, and the brain's growing and everything's happening, and then all of a sudden, at some point, like a critical mass of something, the brain just can't grow anymore. It can't keep going, whether it runs out of energy or there's too many byproducts of the metabolism of that happening, whether it's something in the liver can't keep up. I don't know. Something entered my mind just now. The brain's trying to grow out of the self, out of itself. It's trying lots of different ways. So yeah, it feels good to have 2 days of not feeling trapped, not feeling angry, not feeling like I don't want to be around people. Like I need to stay in bed, and I haven't really had the suicidal feelings these last 2 days either. And I did have them quite a bit, so that's a shift. And if it keeps going like this, I'm not going to think in terms of it's never going to happen again, but that's a monster. Whoa. I think that was one of those monster transport army planes or whatever they are. I don't know much about that, but it's so fascinating how something so huge can fly through the air. So, yeah, I've said this to myself more and more, that I think I need to change my thinking from stopping this from ever happening again to being healthy, but not obsessively so in thinking, well, this is going to stop it from happening again. Still experimenting, but not thinking in terms of this is it. So thinking, well, I'm going to try see what this probiotic stuff does and get a healthier diet. Also do more exercise, be in my body, and do that stuff, like maybe develop a healthy routine again. And then enjoy the time when I'm well. Because the last time that I was well, when I tapered off and I was off meds for 5 months, which was great. I think that was an accomplishment. I didn't use that so much as enjoyment, but going on a mission of some kind. Thinking, oh, this is the answer. This can help people, or so I don't want to do that. I want to enjoy that. I think I need to try to enjoy and see how that goes and enjoy the next couple of years of still having youth to some extent, being 35, and focus on that wellness and maybe sharing just wellness in general rather than stopping this process and then also realizing what makes it better, what makes it worse. Try not to think in terms of setting up a perfect environment for when things are not great. I think I could set up a better system for when things are bad. Like, think about what I can eat and how I can get access to that easily. If I can't leave my house for days, if I can look on Amazon Prime and see some canned food that I might eat that's a little healthy and get it delivered to me or something like that, because what I experienced this time, since I went through it at home, and since I tapered off meds, so I didn't want to say, oh my god, I've tapered off meds, and I didn't really tell anyone. Only my psychiatrist knows and a few friends, but my family doesn't even know. So that was part of the reason why I had to go through it even more by myself, because of the way it arose, even though historically it happens every 8.5 months anyway, no matter what I'm doing. So preparing for that next 8.5 month mark more intelligently, so then when it happens and I'm basically 100% non-functional, I can still eat, survive, not have to ask people to do something, because there is the way of doing it where you can say, well, when I'm not doing well, I'm going to ask this person to do this and set it up beforehand, and that's a way to do it too. But I think I've gotten to the point where maybe I can get through it all on my own and not have people around, and just get through it and not involve anyone, because it worries people. And this time around, it was this situation where people were around and I'm in a terrible internal mental state, and then that gets projected onto my interactions with people, like family and stuff, and it just makes it worse. I'm not saying they make it worse per se, but it's just an awful dynamic. So avoiding that and then seeing if it resolves faster. And, maybe it'll resolve faster next time, and then time after that it takes longer. It's unpredictable for sure. But I think the suffering can be minimized, and putting extra suffering on others, and I can actually see myself apologizing to some of my family members when I'm feeling better, feeling back to myself, not feeling so much inner anger about the past. It's basically being under the influence of the past and projections. Even hallucinations and delusions are projections. And I didn't really have so much of that, but even thinking about the past and bringing it into the present moment is a hallucination. It's not happening now. And there's stuff that can't be changed. Things happen the way they happen, and on a certain level, when I'm doing well, I understand that, and I go on with life, and it doesn't really affect me. But then it's there, and at certain points it does trickle up to the surface, and I can see also, and I felt this time, that there could be something to resolving some of that, but I don't have the means right now. I think I need to focus on utilizing what I already have, the tools I already have, the things I already have, the people I already have, and not spend money on extra. Save the bit of money I have for things like maybe a stand-up paddleboard, maybe a car, a better car. Mine's showing signs of really getting to the end of its day, though it could last a lot longer. And also, if I need to move to a different place, having a little bit of a padding there, and maybe going to California for a month, coming back. I think if I'm feeling good, I'm gonna work on my appearance a bit in terms of just utilizing that as a way to feel good and express that I'm feeling good. Again, making the best of the good times and having fun and enjoying, and be embodied, enjoy the summer, and maybe look more at, okay, what kind of job can I do, and try and have kind of a stable life. And I don't really know what'll happen this year or how it'll turn out, but I do appreciate not having this extra pressure in my brain, and not sure what's bringing me out of it, if it's time, because I've come out of it before without taking all these fancy supplements. But I am going to continue with the very basics, like the multivitamin, the omega-3s, the probiotic. I think the amino acids are helpful. And that would be ditching a lot of the neuroplasticity, BDNF boosting stuff, but I think that happens naturally for me on its own once it gets going. Maybe save those for the time where my brain is obviously dying back. And I really can see something with this idea of the brain growing and being on the manic side and exploring and doing a lot and being curious and all those manic traits, and then how it just ends and one can't even move. It's like the brain is just, it's just stopped growing. It's retreating, and then that's what happens. One can't go anywhere, move, do anything. It's really awful. And this is getting long. I don't want my check-ins to get too long. I don't want this to be my one thing this year. I'm not sure what my one thing will be. It could be music production. It could be just being in the body, being healthy, being active. I remember last year researching stuff and saying to myself, I'm going to regret this because the sun goes away. Do some hikes. Don't be afraid of the wildlife. Get to speak that language of trying new hikes and trying new things outdoors, and make that a really big part of my life. That's what I hope for, at least. I can sit and machinate all day long, and I think it would be great to save that for 10 years down the road. If I'm still alive, sit down with my notebooks and the research I've done and do something with it, but not now while I'm still young, and I somehow need to remind myself of that. And that's all I have for now. I might do another lap after I put this together. Thank you, universe, for making this stop.